I mean, we're not going to magic our way out of that. There's nothing, there isn't a technological answer. No, you're right. Exactly. There isn't. But I mean, a good example of that, I mean, I say things go the way of the dodo all the time, and nobody even really knows for sure what a dodo looks like. It's only accounts, and there was one stuffed specimen that part of it survived a fire. But that's it. So they had to recreate the rest of it. But that was gone before the world knew what it was. I grew up in New England on the seacoast, and the cod fishery was dying, and it has still not recovered. 20, I don't want to say how long it's been, but decades of, cut it back, and, we just continued to exploit that resource until it just lost its capacity to regenerate. And there's a whole way of life that's gone now. Not only that, but there's a fish that they thought could never be overfished. Female codfish is born with 27 million eggs in her belly. They're really, really productive animals, and we destroyed to the point of collapse in the Gulf of Maine and further north into the Maritimes in Canada. And the Portuguese used to talk about being able to walk across them. They used to come on fishing trips before we Europeans came and decided to stay. But when they would breed, the fish were just rolling out of the water. There were so many of them. But it's just amazing that we just don't change our habits with that much evidence.
So to the horse people, does anyone know how many actual wild horses or species of wild horse exist today? Anyone want to take a guess?
I'm going to say one.
You would be right.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure that I'm butchering the pronunciation because I've been admonished several times, but Przewalski's horse is the only remaining wild horse or horse. So it required human intervention to keep the species from being completely extincted. However, the ironic thing is that those horses survived as long as they did because they lived in an area where humans could not. And I think that says a lot, because as we know, the horses are really plastic in their ability. They're very adaptable. Even when we ride them today, they can adapt to a lot of things and a lot of difficult things because they're kind of easygoing and they have low requirements. Mongolia is, I think, the second least populated area of the world. I forget what the first one is. It's some tiny island. But that's the only reason that horses got to continue to live in the wild there. So I think that really brings it quite close to home for us. And the interesting thing about horses is that there's not been a whole lot of studies about horses in the wild, because from the beginning of our history as a culture, more sedentary, agricultural based, we had already taken the horse out of nature to be a part of our culture, to work for us, or first hunted and then used for work. And so all of the research was into how to make it most productive for us and not for how it was evolved to be. And that's a major problem, I think, with ag science in general.
For sure.
And when you try to reproduce what nature does, being only your own species, and not knowing the things that the other organisms have evolved to know, even as smart as we are, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and we have. And so that brings it a little bit closer to home with us and our favorite species. So on that note, because I personally know that over the last couple of years, Christian and myself and some really great friends of ours have been helping us to work on a really huge project with a lot of negative response, which is surprising to me, because you think that everyone does horses because they love horses. And I truly believe that everybody did start with horses because they love horses. But somewhere along the line, you lose sight of that. And So I know for myself that it has been a very conscious effort to stay positive, because this is what I'm going to do. It's going to happen, and I refuse to feel bad about it or have negative thoughts about it. And I would like to know, you have a much bigger problem than I do, and I would like to know, how do you remain positive in the face of all of the challenges facing ecologists?
Oh gosh, I think this was
I think this is my favorite answer.
was this the bitchers and whiners?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there's two ways to respond to a situation that you perceive to be hopeless. You can throw your hands up in the air and give up, or you can do something about it. And that's kind of how it is. And my dad is a working class electrician from New England, and he had a very pragmatic approach to everything. And he said there are two kinds of people in the world. He said there are bitchers and whiners. And a whiner sees a problem and sits down and pouts and crosses his arms and scowls and says there's nothing to do about this. And if the world is on fire, they're going to get burned up. But the bitcher will complain about it while he's filling a bucket with water. And yeah, you're not going to hear me whine. But I can bitch better than anybody you know.
Oh, you might have a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, we have such capacity to change things. And we got here and have the problems that we have because we had such an incredible ability to adapt the environment to us, which is what agriculture was. Mm-hmm. All agriculture is a means to artificially sustain an unnatural number of our species in a certain area.
It's human adaptation to environmental pressures.
That's right.
It's culture. It's what we do.
Like the same direction people are talking about with, well, we've got to adapt to climate change instead of trying to do something differently in our behavior to
Well, that's for sure true. Yeah, and I mean, we have been trained to look at everything in economic terms, and it's caused us to have a sort of a conveyor belt mentality about management of everything. And nature doesn't work that way. Nature is a cycle, not a conveyor belt. And those chickens are coming home to roost now, too.
Absolutely.
But sustainable eating further down the food chain is a great idea, and eating a lot of vegetables is great, but if we're all vegetarians, we'd be done for in a New York minute, because we need big critters to sustain our soil in order to maintain a healthy level of productivity that's even going to begin to produce the kind of volume of food that we need. Mm-hmm. And, taking the natural process out and inserting a economic model that creates a culture of dependency only benefits a few people, and it only lasts for so long.
But they're going to die too.
Yeah, they are. They are. That's for sure. They'll pay people to keep us from eating them, I guess. Right. But that's only going to last for so long too. Absolutely. But I mean, really, there are places in the plains in the Midwest that have no topsoil left, and in geologic terms, that means the horizon is gone because of, I agree, because of unsustainable agriculture process. And there are farmers that have been on synthetic inputs for 50 years that are having to learn regenerative soil science and sustainable soil science now in Iowa. That word has never occurred to them in 2 generations, because you can't grow anything in sand, Same thing. Yeah, bad management. Everything is a human management issue now. The only reason there's anything left is because of us. There's so many of us now that if we don't act to preserve something, it will not continue to be here.
Mm-hmm. On that note, we've talked in several of our presentations, and Mike mentioned it earlier, that technology can only take us so far. There's a limit to what our innovation can fix, because it's not a cycle. It's not a part of the natural cycle, and there's no escaping the laws of physics or biology. It's just not happening. Those are the laws of the universe. And recently, my husband introduced me to an interesting fellow called Napoleon Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of any of his teachings, but he has a really lovely saying, which is that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And that's what man has done so far.
That's true.
But it does not mean that we cannot do the opposite. And in our work with horses and with feeding them in a different way, we've become, I'm not a plant scientist, far from it. Like, still don't understand the Krebs cycle properly, but
Try C3 photosynthesis.
no, I don't want to. I got out of second semester of organic chemistry because I told them I just wanted to do animal behavior. So, but what we've recommended to some very big forage farmers is there's actual incentives from the government to plant native grasses to try to just conserve the grasslands for whatever reason that they want. I don't know exactly what all that is, but those grasses are exactly the ones that our horses need and that they're missing in their full range of the grass families that they live from. And so how ironic is that if we would just stop with the monoculture and put back some native plants that are proven to regenerate the soil from the nutrients that the other ones leach, two problems solved at once. And I think it's a pretty amazing thing, because our horses are not well. If you look at how well-bred horses are today, Ulf, would you agree that there's good sport horses being produced at the moment? And to me, and I haven't been a horseman nearly as long as many, but I remember that even 20 years ago, we saw horses going in top sport for longer than they do now. I don't know how you see that.
I don't think that has so much to do with the material of horses.
Mm-hmm.
It's, people are in a hurry.
They're in a hurry. Exactly. But in all aspects of it. They're in a hurry to feed them a lot, to grow them up for the stallion testing. They're in a hurry to make them go in a way that their body is not capable of, to make them look fancy and make money. So it's all a part of it. And so we know that there are solutions, so long as we're smart enough and we believe in it and we get support behind us.